Welcome to the Accidental Experts podcast. I'm your host, Bryce Hamilton. I'm a licensed clinical social worker and a child and family therapist. I have been in practice for over 15 years, and I'm also a mom of 4. So I know the challenges both professionally and personally. I'm so glad that you're here today to grow your parenting toolbox. Please come as you are and be ready to learn. My goal is to make you the accidental expert so that you can raise healthy humans. Hi, everyone. Welcome back. I'm so glad you're with us today. So sometimes in life, you meet somebody who is just an exceptional human, someone who is incredibly selfless and also is wanting to make a difference in other people's lives. That would be David Woods Bartley. I'm about to introduce you to a pretty dynamic guy. He is a survivor of suicidal ideation and a suicide attempt that was intervened upon. And I can't wait for him to share his story and also just his passion for helping people with you. With that, let's get to David.
Well, and it just, Bryce, I've been looking forward to this I'm trying to remember, we connected, I mean, it was a few months ago.
Yeah.
So, but I've been looking forward to this for a long time. And I love some of the questions that you had sent to me last night to consider, because as often as I talk and do workshops and blah, 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 all the other stuff, you asked some amazing questions. I was like, oh my gosh. So, so I'm really, really excited.
Good. I'm so glad. Okay, so I think we're going to start with, because you said to me before we started recording, you're just an average guy, which I don't think is true. You have a lot of really awesome things to say, but you may feel average. I think we're really all just the same, but we all have special talents that, propel us, and experiences that change us and help us to give us an opportunity, I will say, because not everybody takes this opportunity, but we have an opportunity to take what we've experienced to positively impact other people. So with that, I will say, can you tell us about your story that has led you to be a speaker on why mental health matters and advocating for positive mental health?
Yeah, I think the easiest way, because I could spend a long time talking about it, is on August 31st, 2011, I tried to kill myself. And what I like to say, my take, Bryce, I'm not credentialed like you are. And I say that because my beloved is a school psychologist. So I understand what it takes to have those precious initials past your name. I'm not that. I'm just so I mention that because when I talk about suicide, and I talk about mental health, some of the stuff that I talk about is different. And I'm not saying it's right. I'm just saying it's different. And one of the things that I like to in my audiences is on that day, August 31st, 2011, I was positioned hanging over about a 4-foot fence on top of what's known as the Forest Hill Bridge. And the Forest Hill Bridge is about 2 hours north of the very famous, world famous San Francisco Golden Gate Bridge.
Yes.
But it's 730 feet tall. It's 500 feet further off the ground than its more famous cousin in San Francisco. It's the 4th tallest bridge in the United States. And ultimately, I was not going to kill myself because of what I was thinking. And I wasn't going to kill myself because of what I was feeling. I was going to kill myself because of what I believed. And there's nothing that we as human beings, not just in the crisis of suicide, but in everything we do is traced back to what our beliefs are. And we don't talk about that enough, I think, when we're talking about suicide awareness, because if we can understand that people are thinking and feeling, and how successful are we in changing unless we're in the midst of somebody like you or my beloved, it takes time to help people create different patterns of thought that result in different feelings. But we can actually, in really simple ways, based on my experience, help influence people to create a different belief set. And so on that day, though, what I believed was I was worthless and useless and stupid and pitiful and grotesque and incredibly like you couldn't look at me so ugly. That's what I thought I looked like. And the worst belief it's the most damning belief, the tragic belief was that everybody would be better off without me.
Mm-hmm.
Now, none of those things are true. But the other thing that I take issue with is, I try to say, part of our frustration around suicide is we're trying to approach it like it's logical. There's nothing logical about it. And in fact, I'm a freak about quotes. I love quotations. And the great Kay Redfield Jamison, who lost a child to suicide, she says this: each way to suicide is its own, intensely private, unknowable, and terrible. Suicide will have seemed to its perpetrator the last and best of bad possibilities, and any attempt by the living to chart this final terrain of life can only be a sketch maddeningly incomplete. Now, that can be hard to hear, but it's incredibly true. It is. And so I think part of it is, and I think you as an incredible counselor would agree with me, is sometimes you just have to, some things don't make sense.
Yeah.
It's just the way it is. So let's not try to make up that it makes sense. It made no sense, because here's really, for me, I laugh in respect of the power of this damn thing that it has over souls of all ages and demographics. That here I thought I was worthless. And at the time I was married to an amazing woman who is still one of my closest friends. We exchanged I love yous literally today by phone. At that moment, Bryce, we were running a nationally recognized end-of-life animal sanctuary. I think, dude, how could you feel like you were worthless when you were taking care of somebody else's dying animals? That doesn't make sense. You're right. It doesn't make sense. But by the power of connection, an officer, in response to a call, saved my life and took me off that bridge to an emergency room, and then 15 days in a lockdown psych ward, which changed my life, in the midst of amazing professionals who have committed their lives to taking care of souls like me with SMI, serious mental illness, and began this journey where I can be here with you today, from mental hellness to mental wellness. And it has been an incredibly non-linear path. Anything but straight. And as recently as at the end of last year, I dipped back into a horrific place that made no sense. Like, can this be happening? But was once again ushered into the realms and into the midst of souls like you to bring me back into a place of wellness. And it's so, as I say, I am a product of the people in my life. Like, I have great souls. They're some amazing people, and I think I'll give a talk and people come up and we'll talk about relationships and this, for some people, if they have one person that they can count on, Bryce, I probably literally, and this is not an exaggeration, probably have close to 100. And so my job is to give back, is to get this out of the way and allow whatever these ideas that the universe wants to pass on to maybe take the great work that's being done around suicide. But I think we're actually in a season in which we gotta make a slight change, because the numbers are not going the right way. And there's great work, and we gotta do I think it's not gonna be a complete overhaul. I think it's gonna be, we just gotta do a couple things. And I have some ideas. I hope they help, but I think the more I do this, the more I'm convinced. I'm like, okay, these ideas keep coming into my head. I keep practicing them every day. They seem like they work. So
yeah, I love this. Because I think, somebody said, and I don't know who it was, but they said, if you have a pulse, you have a purpose.
Oh,
And
wow.
I love that. Right. So if you're here, there's a reason why
Mm.
you're here, and there's something great that you need to do. And I love that you're taking advantage of that pulse that you have. So much more than just a pulse, but you have a pulse, and so you have a purpose. And so let's utilize it. So tell me, how did you talking about your journey? You said you have severe mental illness, and what is that? What's your diagnosis?
Depression.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, which I mean, people say, I say, yeah, like, oh, okay. But it is, I mean, it is a spectrum, right? There are people who I think
Yeah.
we all have depressive episodes at times, which might look like I just can't really get out of bed. I'm just not really interested in some of the things, but I'm still going to work and I'm still doing some stuff and I'm able to invest in my life still. And then we have the whole other side, which is debilitating, can't do anything, right? Can culminate with suicidal intent, ideation, action, and not able to invest in your life to work. Your mental state is in such a place that you just can't even get dressed, can't even fathom those things. So I think people don't understand sometimes what the people will be like, oh, I struggle with whatever. Or I saw a TikTok and now I have OCD. Um, which I'm like, that's not really how it works. But I appreciate that people want to be knowledgeable. But I do think that in some ways we underestimate the power of what mental illness looks like and what it can look like for people's lives. Something I'm curious about, this isn't always true, but I think when I have interacted with people that have some type of severe mental illness, lots of times there's some type of tragedy or trauma that's happened. Is that something that's in your story?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so in the talk that I give most often, it answers four questions. What happened? What does it feel like? How do you be well? And what can we do in regards to this thing called suicide? And so when
Yeah.
I answer the first question, I say, well, really, it's two things. The first thing, I was born, and people kind of smile and they laughed. And so I inherited the gene from my grandfather who had killed himself on my father's
Mm-hmm.
side. When my
Mm-hmm.
father was just 5, and my father, who in turn suffered tragically from depression and died at 42 from cancer. But certainly, what I know now of having lived with it, the depression didn't help anything.
Mm-hmm.
So, but I have 3 older brothers who are my heroes, and they know nothing except what their brother shares with them about this thing called depression. And
Mm-hmm.
she said, well, what happened to me? And it's when I was 12, I was savagely sodomized and raped on repeat occasions by a Boy Scout leader. And every time the monster would rob me of my innocence, he
Mm-hmm.
would say, now, David, remember, these are initiations and all the boys go through it, but we don't talk about it. And so the great Maya Angelou says, there's no greater agony than bearing the weight of an untold story.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's a great number of men who grew up in the 70s like me in their 50s and 60s who are holding untold stories.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I am so sorry that that happened to you. I
Mm.
mean, what a crime, truly.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, I interviewed Michelle Denault. I don't know if you're familiar with her, but she's an advocate for grooming, like educating people on grooming, sexual abuse, and
Mm.
just the games that sexual abusers play, or kind of their playbook that they go by. And one of the things that when I interviewed her that really stuck with me is that the average person who has been perpetrated against holds that to themselves until 40 or older.
Wow.
And
Yeah.
I thought, that just hurts me, right? That's
Yeah.
not the thing I'm experiencing, but like you're having to live your entire life with this giant secret that you can't tell people. Or sometimes we push it down so much that we don't remember that it happened and then it pops up and we utilize substances and different things to try to cope. And evil,
Yeah.
right? True evil does exist. Um, well, thank you for sharing that with us. I think that that's important for people to understand where you're coming from and why you're so passionate about this, because it's not just, I think, living with a mental health challenge gives you credibility, right? You don't need the letters behind your name because you really
Mm.
know what it's like. And so, yes, I have the credentials behind my name, but I am so thankful for people who are willing to share their stories to undo the aloneness that people experiencing mental health issues, whether it would be a severe mental health issue or something that we would say is like general anxiety. Maybe it's not debilitating, but
Mm.
that's hard to know that you're not alone, because if people don't talk about it, we don't know what to do with it. And we think we're the only person who's ever experienced that. So I love what you're doing. Thank you.
No, thank you for those words from you mean the world to me. And it's interesting. I'll share a little bit later what, and I'm a very emotional speaker, obviously. What somebody did that like Bryce, this one act, the amount of healing, it's amazing.
Mm-hmm.
And that's really what, in response to what we're dealing with, these are the things that I like to talk about. And you first got to talk about the tough stuff,
Mm-hmm.
and then talk about these other things that, you don't have to be credentialed to do this thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
just,
Yeah. Well,
yeah.
thank you for turning this pain into something that can transform and heal other people.
Right. Well, and I will give credit, thank you, to the people in my life who support me, along with my psychiatrist and my therapist and my group and the
Yeah.
medications that I take. And I also I have benefited incredibly from ECT as well.
Will you talk about, we have not done an episode on ECT, so people may not know what that is. Can you speak to what that is?
So what happened, I'm a very compliant person. And if you give me a roadmap, say, hey, take these meds, show up to do this, I'm going to do these things. And so last year was the busiest year I'd had with speaking. I was literally all over the world, primarily with
Mm-hmm.
the military. And I got at home and fell into this horrific depression. Just terrible.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was what they call, and this, treatment resistant, because I'm doing all these things, but how could this happen? So ECT is electroconvulsive therapy. So some people know it as shock therapy.
Mm-hmm.
And some people know it through the movie One Flew Over a Cuckoo's Nest, which it is none of that. So I have had, believe it or not, 37 sessions
Mm-hmm.
since the beginning of the year. And so here's what happens. So I go in, I see my amazing psychiatrist, Dr. Lauren Marassa, and we go into the hospital, and she is we're talking. She's putting electrodes around my head, because you can do it on half your brain or both sides. I needed both sides. Dr. Simon, the anesthesiologist, who seriously should be a stand-up comic, because he is just so funny.
They are the funniest people,
My God,
actually.
they're
The
hilarious.
anesthesiologists and nurse anesthetists are the
They're,
funniest
they
people, truly.
are. My
Yes. Yeah.
gosh. So he's getting me all ready. And then when I'm dialed in, then he does, because all my sessions have had ketamine. So he'll do ketamine first, and which doesn't feel any, and then he always gets the last word. He says, David, are you ready for your nap? I said, Dr. Simon, I said, brother, I'm ready. Puts me to sleep. And then right after I'm asleep, then he gives me another drug. Now I'm asleep, so I don't know. He gives me another drug, which completely paralyzes me. Because what they're going to do is they're going to induce a seizure, and they don't want me to hurt myself or break a bone
Mm-hmm.
or anything else. So then they induce the seizure with electrically, goes on for 30 seconds to a minute. And then when that's done, they'll reverse the paralysis, and I'm breathing on my own. Then I go into recovery, and I'll see Ron, Jeremy, Amanda, Betty, Kelsey. And I get emotional, Bryce, because I mean, these people, I mean, I've been there 37 times over this year. That that's a sacred relationship. And then, so, come to from the general anesthesia, and then I go home. Start to finish is about 3 hours. And let me tell you two milestones that have happened this year. So in August, so by that point I'd had, I don't know how many, whatever sessions of ECT. I'm still doing therapy and meds and everything else, and working out, eating right, and blah, blah, blah. So I'm going to a middle school, and it's about 2 hours away. So I've been driving, it's in the morning, and I'm going to spend 3 days there. I'm going to talk to 550 middle school kids about mental health and suicide and all these things. And so I go in the office and I say, hey, I really got to go to the bathroom. May I use your restroom? And they say, yes. Bryce, I walk in and I shut the door. And the only way I can describe it is like an out-of-body type experience. And what happened was, for the first time in my life, I literally said out loud, I'm so glad I didn't kill myself.
Amazing.
I'm like, where did that come from? Like, I'm in a bathroom in a middle school, and it was so clear. And the second thing happened just maybe about a week ago. So this has been a hard year. So my business for whatever reason, it went from the busiest year to the slowest year. And so there's economic challenges. I have my left hip has to be replaced. The pain is off the chart. It's been hard. It has been a hard year. So the other day I was my beloved Summer, and we have 3 kids that came with her as part of the package, which was great because Deanna and I, who had the sanctuary, we had animal children. They all had 4 legs. These only have 2. So we're standing in the kitchen. And again, it's been a hard year. And I look at Summer and I say, you know what? No matter how hard it gets, I know now I will never kill myself. And for some who might listen and think, well, yeah, but I've thought about killing myself for 50 years. And to have this, to not only have the experience in August, we're like, man, God, I'm so glad I didn't kill myself. That in and of itself was indescribable. But now to do, we know when we say stuff with a knowing, they say, I'll never kill myself. I credit ECT for that.
Yeah. Transforming how your brain's functioning.
Oh man.
Yeah.
It's Yeah, it's, and so now, and I've asked the hospital and the doctor, because it's so underutilized, because people are freaked out by it. They're like, oh my God, that makes no sense. You're going to shock me and you're going to help. And I'm like, so again, how great life is, but I sometimes forget. So on this last session, I'm in recovery, and they have at the hospital, I have these lazy boy chairs. And I'm sitting there, I have these great blankets that they warm up and they give to you, which just feels so good.
I know it does. Yes. Uh-huh.
So Betty is my favorite nurse. And I'm always amazed how, if I can pay attention, life will give me these extraordinary opportunities. So I'm sitting in the chair, and Betty comes over and she leans in and she whispers, she said, David, there's a new patient named Ken, and he's only had a couple of treatments. Will you please let him know it's going to be okay? So here comes Ken, and I'm like, God, who's this lucky? And I said, hey, brother, it's going to be okay. I promise you. It's good stuff. But you just think, man, I'm astonished.
Yeah.
Oh, forgive I am like crazy emotional.
Hey, that's okay.
But I'm a crier.
I can handle emotions. So today I'm not seeing patients, but I always say to people when they cry, I'm like, here's the rule. I have to make one person cry every day. So I say, thank you for being that person. It can be tears of joy. It doesn't have to be sadness, right? It can be tears of anything. I can handle all of it, but I make the joke just because I know sometimes it feels uncomfortable. You seem pretty confident and comfortable with your emotions, and I appreciate that.
No, I cry in front of pretty much every speech I give. I cry.
Yeah. Well, it is how you're connecting to this really important topic. So let's talk about one of the things that really stood out to me that you talk about that I just love is this idea of resilience, which I mean, resilience matters to me. And I think it's something that we underutilize in our society and underteach how important resilience is. So can you talk to me about why your foundation is kind of built on resilience and what makes somebody resilient?
Yeah. My thought, resilience requires experience. So in other words, I can't get up in front of a room and teach somebody to be resilient. You can't read it in a book, and I can give you a PowerPoint and everything. That doesn't, you got to have experience. You got to, I can, maybe give you an idea about what it might look like. And for me, it was looking just in the people around me to get an idea of the sense of resilience. And my first wife in particular is an amazingly resilient soul. This, the quintessential ability to quote unquote bounce back. So, we had as many as 100 animals at the sanctuary at any one time. And we were primarily, Bryce, we were end of life. So in all the work, in all the years we did that work, we had 90 animals die.
Wow.
And I think about, my former beloved and her ability. Well, it was just like she specifically from the very beginning sought out animals that nobody wanted, that were tortured and abused. Most all were dying. And, so first she had to convince me, like, hey, this is a good idea. And I'm like, why would this be a good idea? Like, there's nothing about this. And she try something, it didn't work, and try something, it didn't work, try something, oh, now it worked. And I watched And my eldest brother served 42 years in the Army. And you want to talk about resiliency, this facing disappointment and then going to that. And I think, as much as we need to develop things on our own, for me, the single greatest power, the weapon that we can have against this thing, and let's just talk about suicide, is ushered in by way of connection. So this is connection for me. And I'm gonna steal the words of one of your own, Brene Brown, and she says, I define connection as the energy that exists between people when they feel seen, heard, and valued, when they can give and receive without judgment, and they derive strength and sustenance from the relationship. Okay, could that be like a little bit better? So
she gets it. Yes.
So Dr. Brown puts it in that way. And see, I think where I maybe do a little bit different is there'll be some males who are kind of hardliners about teaching young boys, okay, you got to be resilient, you got to like do it on your own, and get your ass kicked, and pick yourself up by your bootstraps, and blah 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 blah. I'm like, yeah, you know what? Okay, that's one way. I get it, but I actually think this way, by way of connection in response to some hardship, when you're in the presence with another human being and you feel seen, heard, and valued, okay, that actually gives you the ingredients for long-lasting resilience.
Yeah.
Resilience then that you can duplicate. And see, in my opinion, my assertion, Bryce, is in that experience of connection, there's only one emotion that comes out. There's only one, and it's hope. And for me, hope is the most important emotion in for a human being. Love and joy and faith, those are good. They're powerful. But if you look at the definition, Cambridge Dictionary, the feeling that what is wanted can be had. So what I say to people say, okay, I'm suicidal. I go see my counselor, Bryce. Bryce has this incredible ability to create the space where I feel seen, heard, and valued, where I can give and receive without judgment, and I derive strength and sustenance. It's like I have a full meal every time that I'm with Bryce. So then if in that space, and you can't argue with me, we all, of course, in that space, you're going to feel hope. Then I ask people, I say, what's the one thing that every suicidal person wants? And people will always say, well, they want to die. I'm like, no, that's where you're wrong. I didn't want to die. I wanted my pain to end.
Yeah.
So if my one need, if the one thing that I want more than anything else is my pain to end, and I'm in the space of connection, I thus experience hope. People don't kill themselves when they feel hope. Not hope. They don't. Some other emotion maybe, not hope. They don't. And so then in my little silly way is to teach people you can create connection with anybody, anytime, any place, anywhere. I promise you. And like I'll teach you 3 ways that you're already doing. Do it more, and you will save lives.
Okay, tell me. I'm in.
Well, but part of it is, let me back up.
Okay.
And I think we have to change the way we talk about this. And let me give you an example. We don't call it an anti-drowning jacket. We call it a life jacket. We don't call it an anti-crash belt. We call it a safety belt. So in other words, we look at crises that could potentially happen, and our whole focus is on not the prevention of something, it's on the preservation of something. And if you look at the definitions between the two, prevention is stop. It's singular. It's a transaction. Okay, stopped. He's good. Don't have to worry about it anymore. Preservation, by definition, is taking something of value and keeping it safe. We don't. Why don't we? We got to call. I don't talk about suicide prevention. I talk about life affirmation. I want to preserve this thing. So 3 ways: recognition, understanding, and expression. First thing, recognition. I'm going to ask you, and you probably already are, become great at remembering people's names.
Mm-hmm.
Just do that. And here's the homework assignment. Next time you and your beloved go out to dinner, that server, you're going to have a relationship with that soul for about an hour. Every single time, not every third time, not every other time, every single time that soul comes to your table, use their name. And then you tell me what it's like at the end of an hour. It'll blow your mind.
Mm-hmm.
So now take that and the person where you go to the gym. Do you know the person who checks you in when you go to your gym? You know, all these different people. You can develop friendships with these souls.
Mm-hmm.
It's the simple act. And here's a story. So you know what a Boston Terrier is?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
So we had tons of Bostons. And we became known again as the place where bring your animals to. The sanctuary was called A Chance for Bliss, named after the very first 2 dogs who came, Chance and Bliss, who were Boston Terriers. So we get a call one day from the Sacramento Animal Shelter from Dr. Margaret Wright, who was the veterinarian there. And she says, hey guys, I got this old female. She's probably 14, 15. She's a Boston. She's got a gray muzzle. She's like a queen. I know how much you guys like this. She just said, nobody wants her, but I can't put her down. It's just something about, do you have room? And we said, absolutely. Of course we do.
Mm-hmm.
So we go down there and I'll never forget, Dr. Wright was really tall and she was very stoic. She wasn't a hugger like me. So I was confused when she had obviously been crying. And here she's holding Boston Terrier. And I said, Dr. Wright, are you okay? And she says, yes, I'm fine. I'm okay. Just give me a sec. Wow. Okay. Because I'm a crier. And she says, before I could say anything, she said, I've named her Ruth. I'm like, okay. And before I could maybe quiz her, she said, I've named her Ruth. And she was incredibly passionate, Bryce. I've named her Ruth because I wanted her to have respect, understanding, truth, and honor.
Hmm.
When you remember somebody's name, it's exactly what you give them.
Yeah.
It's
Names
exactly
matter. Yeah.
just that way. So, and then the second is what we see is almost never what is. And so I say, you got to leverage curiosity to create understanding, because the opposite of fear isn't calm. The opposite of fear is understanding.
Mm-hmm.
The more we understand, the less we fear.
Mm-hmm.
You know, my experience, the first time I had ECT versus the 37th time ECT, okay, because I understand this.
Mm-hmm.
And so old man had walked into another animal shelter, had this old beagle, said to the woman, says, hey, I was out on my walk and I found this dog and I checked him for kind of head to toe, no identification. I thought I should bring him in here. And the shelter worker's like, oh my God, thank you so much. Like, most people would have just walked on by. You probably saved his life. And the man said, that's no big deal. And so the shelter worker said, he's old, probably not microchip, but who knows, maybe we'll get lucky. I'm going to take him in the back and microchip. Would you please just fill out your information about who you are, your name, number, and where you found him, just in case we need to get in touch with you. So as the story goes, as I was told, you could literally hear the shelter worker scream, oh my God, he's microchipped. And she comes back and she's like, sir, he's microchipped. His name is Joshua. You saved his life. And so he says, no, it's okay. It's no big deal. It's no big deal. And he's walking out. And just before he's about to leave, the shelter worker looks at the information that he filled out and compares the information on the microchip, and it matched. This was his dog, but he lied.
Mm.
Now, I would have lost my mind. But how many times have we see something, we're like, you've got to be kidding me. But you know what she did? She didn't ask a why question. I hate why questions, because why is all about justification.
Mm-hmm.
When you change a why question to a what question, you invite somebody to share. She looked at the man and she said, "Sir, what happened?" At that point, like me, burst into tears. And he said, "This is Joshua. I've had Joshua for 16 years. There's nothing more important to me than my dog, but I'm dying. And I'm going into a medical facility. And I begged and I pleaded it, but they won't let me take Joshua. And I was afraid if I came in here and told the truth that you would put him to sleep. And I know he's not ready." And because of the question, she said, "Sir, there's a sanctuary down the hill. And they take in old dogs just like Joshua. How about we make a phone call and see if they have room?" And we did. And I'll never forget that beautiful man handing me the most important thing in his life. All because of somebody asking the right question. Not why, but what. And then the last is expression. And I'll tell two quick stories. So we lost our father. I was just 7. And my 3 brothers are older. And my eldest, the 42 years in the Army, who became a 2-star general, he really, at that point, moved in as my dad. And he continues to be that. So he and his bride of 48 years live in Illinois, and I live in California. So every day, Bryce, first thing I do is I grab my phone because there's going to be a text from my dad every day. 4 parts, always the same. First part is what he's doing that day. Second part, what his direction for me. Hey, do this. Hey, you got a podcast today? Do this. Do this. Third part, motivational quote. Fourth part, love you. Every freaking day. So I was working in an Army unit and commanded by Lieutenant Colonel Daniel Trouse, and definitely made an incredible connection with the colonel over the several days that I was there with his unit. And the last day he said, "Hey, David, would you please come to my office?" And I said, "Absolutely, sir." And so he says, "David, have a seat." So he's standing up. He's a big guy, and I'm sitting at his desk. He says, "David, I got to tell you how much I so enjoyed your stories, your take on this. It's different. It's what we need. I so appreciate it." He said, "But David, I got to tell you, I'm so angry." And then Bryce, I'm like, "Oh no!" I'm like, "Good Lord, did I overshare? Or did I? I mean, like," and he said, "Oh, I'm sorry. No, David, I'm not mad at you." He says, "David, what happened to you and the Boy Scouts? I can't accept that. I can't tolerate that. I can't process that." He says, "David, I was a Boy Scout." So, "David, I was an Eagle Scout." And he said, "Do you know what an Eagle Scout is?" I said, "Sir, I do. I do know what an Eagle Scout is." He says, "David, every good part of who I am as a commander, as a husband, as a father, I learned as an Eagle Scout. And to have you have done to you, I can't accept that." Mm-hmm. And it felt incredible in the sense it's like another big brother sticking up. So again, he's standing in front of me, and all of a sudden I see he takes his hand, he reaches behind him, and he pulls out his wallet. And I thought, okay. And he pulls out, it looks like it's like the size of a credit card. And I'm totally confused. I have no idea what's going on. He said, "David, when you become an Eagle Scout, they give you one of these." And it literally, where it says, it's an Eagle Scout card. He says, "David, I got this on November 3rd, 1998. You talk to any Eagle Scouts, they got their card." And he said, he handed it to me, and I'm like, wow, it's just, and again, to having somebody become so upset about something to me. And Bryce, I went to give the card back, and he said, "No, you keep it. You've earned it."
Mm.
I cannot tell you how many times at the end of a speech, and it happened last week, and of all places, a med school, when an Eagle Scout will come up and show me their card. And somebody not long ago asked me, said, "Well, you must hate the Boy Scouts." And I'm like, you know what? I don't. And I had to think, how is that? It's this. This is what saves lives.
Mm-hmm.
This is what this fosters resilience.
Mm-hmm.
This is the life preserver. This is what keeps your head above water.
Yeah.
And I text Colonel Troust all the time, and I say, "Sir," he's always like, "David, you're the one doing the hard work."
Mm-hmm.
Like, well, so I think, these things, that's what we can do. That none of it's complicated. I can remember somebody's name. I can ask a different question. I can let somebody know how I feel. So I don't know if you know Drew Ramsey. He's an amazing psychiatrist, and he's a wild man on Instagram. My gosh. And Dr. Ramsey is very much into brain gut health.
Mm-hmm.
And really, he puts everything, he doesn't cry like I do. He says this: someone you see today is thinking about killing themselves. Your smile, your question, your love could save them. Trust me, they told me it did.
Mm-hmm.
I think, shit, we can do this.
Yeah.
As much about preventing something as it is about preserving something. How about we do that? Let's try it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I definitely agree with you. I mean, a shift on perspective with this, doing what we've been doing. I mean, we're trying. The intention
Yeah,
is right,
right.
right? Like everybody wants to keep the people that they love alive. And if
Yeah.
they're having suicidal thoughts, they want them to be alive. But I think this isn't something that just one person does. This is something that we all do. And I think I love my husband and I go on dates on Tuesday nights to keep the romance alive with 4 children. So
Amen. Yeah.
yeah, so we do that, and something that we try to do is to, go to a restaurant that we can chat with
Right.
the bartender or whoever it is, right? Like sit at the table and talk with them, to connect with them, and people want to share. People want to be seen. There's a guy at a restaurant down the street that we'd love to go to because he just is so chatty, and I think he's a really cool person. And his name is actually David as well. And we go, I know, right? Funny. It must be a theme
It
among
must
people named
be.
David.
Well, I'll tell.
Um,
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly.
but we love it because it's like we have a connection with this person. But I mean, just having him be seen, and kindness matters.
Oh, I just, it's so interesting because my business is not doing as much as I need it to do. So what can I do? And my dad, my brother, he said, "Well, what if you did Uber and Lyft?" And I'm like, okay. And so at first I'm like, what a loser. You've done 2 TED Talks and blah, blah, blah. Now you're driving Uber and Lyft. Bryce, I tell you what, I love it. and you know what? As I tell people, what I tell people, people don't want to talk, they want to share. And it is incredible. The connections has been, I love it. It is amazing. It's, it's so rare when somebody doesn't want to share, but in some, I met a young man, probably about a week ago, whose dad is doing ECT. And I'm like, wow.
Wow.
And he said, do you mind if I ask you some questions? I'm like, oh my God, please. And then had another young woman the other day who fighting depression. So it's like, what I tell people is everybody who gets in my car is there by divine appointment.
Yeah.
There's no accident.
Yeah. Yeah. You're living into your purpose. And I think, somebody said the other day, something about it was a LinkedIn post but it was saying, something about like when things are getting hard, that's right before the like magic happens. Like when you're feeling like giving up, that's right when where you're supposed to be is exactly where you are. And I think, I need to hear that too, because there are times where I'm like, what am I doing? I am so busy, right? I don't need to add anything else to my plate, or this is silly or whatever. Focus on this one thing. And then I'm like, no, keep going, keep going. It's hard. It's hard to keep going. But that
Yeah.
is part of the definition of being resilient, right? Is that ability to keep going, but then also the ability to kind of bounce back, right? As you mentioned, from when hard things happen, like how quickly can you get back on your feet? And sometimes it really sucks and it's really hard and it takes a long time, which doesn't mean you're
No,
not resilient.
no, and I love many things about you, and including the reality in which you speak is, I think, even in our good intentions, where like sometimes people think, okay, here's how it's gonna be, but we don't talk about what it's gonna take to get there. And it's not about being doom and gloom, but I think part of it is just in the recognition of the difficulty. Most likely, we don't know, most likely it is honoring the way that people feel. That to me is the most important part. And before I forget, because this is just, so it all goes back to this thing called hope. And Brooke found this from a guy on Twitter named Matthew who loves cats. Bryce, this is like one of the best things I've ever read in my life. Here's what Matthew says. This is all about hope. And here's why. That's why this is the most important emotion. People speak of hope as if it is this delicate, ephemeral thing made of whispers and spider webs. It's not. Hope has dirt on her face, blood on her knuckles, the grit of cobblestones in her hair, and just spat out a tooth as she rises for another go.
That's it.
That's, I said, that's amazing. How did you write that? So, and I think that, for those of us with SMI, that's what we're looking for. You don't read that about love. You don't read that about faith. You read it about hope. And I think, when you connect with that beautiful soul, David, the server, you and your beloved make his night just as much as vice versa. It is. Dale Carnegie said it, and he said, to a person, the sound of that person's name is the sweetest sound in any language. It is. You become, and what's interesting was working with some middle school kids. This is I thought was so cool. It's very telling because I talk about this. My talk to middle school kids is it's not quite as intense as it is with here, but actually what we do is there's a 6-minute video that was done about the sanctuary. So without saying anything, we show the video, and then I get up and say, would you think that that guy there, which is this guy here, a year after that video was shot, tried to kill himself? And the kids are like, what? And then we go through. So, but at one point I talked to the kids about names, and this shocked me. I said, who here is good with names? Easily 3/4 of the kids raise their hands. I said, I'll tell you what, you go into an adult group and ask that same question, it's going to be you and me and your husband are going to be the ones raising their hands. But you know what else? But you know what? And I wanted to say this earlier, but I forgot. But I think it's helpful for those who are listening and are trying to make sense of depression. And so I asked second graders, Bryce, second graders. I asked them, I said, hey, is there a difference between sadness and depression? And they looked at me like I was an idiot. They said, of course there's a difference. I'm like, really? That's like, okay, well, who wants to tell me? A little boy in the front row, boom, hand is up. His name was Trevor. I said, all right, brother, tell me. He said, Mr. Bartley, it's easy. When you're sad, you know why. When you're depressed, you don't.
Bam.
I'm like, oh my God. Second grade, Bryce.
That's amazing.
And I'm like, that's exactly right. You don't know why.
Yeah.
It's just like, wow. It's incredible. And then the great chef David Chang, who fights bipolar, he says, when you're depressed, you're convinced that everything you think is true. And I put those two quotes together because I'm like, we're not stupid. We're not out of our mind.
No.
We just have this thing. We don't, I don't know why. It makes no sense, but give me this. You give me this, and just spat out a tooth as she rises for another go. I'm like, okay, that, and that comes up when you got something like this is given to you.
Yeah.
I mean, it is amazing. I just gave a talk to med students last week, and 2 different students came up and showed me their Eagle Scout card. And they were like, wow. I'm like, yeah, man, we can do this.
Yeah. Well, and I had this thought thinking about that. I'm like thinking about how much that card meant or means to every Boy Scout, Eagle Scout, right?
Oh,
that's an honor, right?
Yeah.
And that means you are so valuable too.
Yeah,
because for somebody to give their card to you is tremendous.
And they all say the same thing. The fact he gave you his card, and he is such a humble man, Bryce. I mean, as mentioned before, I text him all the time, and I say, sir, I can't thank you enough. And he puts it back on me. To think that we hold that's a life preserver.
Yeah.
It's, yeah.
So what do you think? I mean, you've said a lot of different things. What do you think is really making a difference in your life right now? And how are you managing your mental health? We've kind of talked about this, but I'd like you to put some specific things to that.
Yeah. No, so I'm a routine guy. So it is body, mind, and spirit. So it's diet as best as I can. My sleep has been totally screwed up because of my goofy hip. But diet, sleep, exercise, I'm still going to time outside. I'm on 4 meds. I take Remeron, Lexapro, Mirapax, and lithium. Then I have counseling with I have 3 different counselors that I kind of rotate, and they're all psychiatrists, and they're all men. They all 3 I love dearly. Still doing ECT. Now we're doing maintenance. Haven't done as much group therapy because I was traveling a little bit, and then with this hip, it's been difficult. And then I have my own spiritual practice. And this is so important to me. And what's made this year difficult, part of what's made this year difficult is that I haven't done it as much. And so, and you said this in certain ways, and I really appreciate the reminder is, okay, I don't have to be standing in front of 500 people. I can be standing in front of one person, on a corner. I can, my 3 children, I'm a bonus dad. I'm
Mm-hmm.
just learning how to be it to, and so I'm like, okay, that's good. That's to do those things.
Mm-hmm.
And then drive an Uber and Lyft, is to just have these conversations that are,
Mm-hmm.
it reinforces my belief in our work that people want to share. But somebody said to me the other day, said, "Oh, you must have some bad rides." I'm like, I've actually never had a bad ride.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think I ever will. I just don't believe it. I think I think the universe has allowed me, kind of like when Betty said that Ken is a new patient. Would you please let him know it's going to be okay?
Mm-hmm.
Like, who gets to do that? Like you trust me that much?
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, so those things I have to do, Bryce. I have to.
Mm-hmm.
I Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's helpful to have a system, right? And a group of people. We can't do this in isolation. It doesn't matter what the event
No.
is that we're doing, whether it's parenting, navigating mental illness, navigating school, right? Like all the things that are sit in front of us. That I think building resilience is also, I mean, you can do it by yourself, but I think it's so much more enjoyable in a community.
And what is it? I mean, there's a couple. I'm trying to think of the metaphors. Give a person a fish, feed him for a day, teach him to fish, feed him light, and then I
Yeah.
think it's the same thing. That see, and for me, Lieutenant Colonel Trouse, when he gave me his Eagle Scout card, that's that helps me build resilience.
Yeah.
And I always, I love definitions. Um, so where was the definition? I usually will go to here. Shoot, where is it? I always go to the Cambridge Dictionary because I figure, okay, Cambridge Dictionary kind of knows. So and they're so great. So Cambridge Dictionary, in their definition of resilient, is able to be happy, successful, etc. again after something difficult or bad has happened.
Mm-hmm.
What a great definition.
Yeah.
And so I think to do it in the context of connection,
Mm-hmm.
I think that has, not that the other way is bad, but I think this can work. I, I just, I don't know. I hate to make something wrong to make my point right. So I think that in this day and age, people can become resilient when connection becomes a priority in their life.
Yeah.
And I don't force myself on people who I drive an Uber and Lyft, and I almost
Mm-hmm.
never talk about myself unless they say, "Hey, is this your primary gig?" And they usually always start out with, "Hey," or "How's your Saturday?" And you can tell pretty quick, And man, sometimes it goes into some directions you're like,
Mm-hmm.
"Oh my God, it's incredible."
Yeah. Yeah, I think we often just need to give the space, right? Exactly what you're
Exactly.
saying is about the question, right? And I think remembering that we're all humans is a really important piece of like not forgetting that like the person sacking your groceries is a human and the person who is washing your car or I go to Waterway and they'll like dry your car off like they're humans and just like being like, "Hey, thanks so much. How's your day going? Has it been busy?" Right? Like just asking questions like, "What high school do you go to? What's this year
Right.
looking like?" Right? Like, I think just it doesn't matter exactly what you're talking about, right? But giving them space. And if they think I'm a crazy lady, I'm okay with that. But for most people, they don't feel that way. They're like, "Oh
Yep.
yeah, hey, did you bring your dog with you this time?" Right? Like they remember who you are. They want to connect.
Exactly. And I think in those instances, in taking it one step further and asking them their name, even if you're only going to be there for 15 seconds,
Yeah.
it's because, and then sometimes you hear these incredible names. You're like, "Oh my God,
Hmm.
that's an amazing name."
Yeah. 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 Yeah, I can think of a time I was maybe in high school, and no, I must not. I must have been in college, and there was like a younger boy who was at the place drying the car off, and I was like, "Hey, what's your name?" And he was like, "John." And I was like, stuck my hand out, and I was like, "Nice to meet you, John." And he was like, "A girl has never shook my hand like that." I was like, "Well, I'm
Mm,
glad to be the first." You know, and
that,
it was just a
right.
funny response because I thought, huh. I mean, this is way pre-COVID. Like we weren't afraid of shaking people's hands. And I'm just like, huh, that's interesting. But I think, we are creatures of connection, without a doubt. We are,
Oh,
right? Whether we're using our phone as a coping skill, to help us avoid or to create what we think is connection, or we're doing it in person, which is the way that I think humans are made to do connection. Obviously, we're doing virtual here, but I feel connected to you. But I'm not on
oh,
my phone. I'm not distracted. I'm actually engaging in the conversation, which I think is part of what the difference is that we do in conversation sometimes. Online is it's a distraction. We're not really getting to know that person. We're not really listening. We're just talking sometimes, I think most of the time.
yeah.
But
And maybe even if we could maybe use those as kind of practice, for the when you're
mhm,
when you're with your Uber or your Lyft driver,
yeah.
because it's fun. It's fun. Bryce, it's astonishing to me because I'm such a talker that I mean I've heard this umpteen times. Like, oh my god, I've never had a chance to talk to my Uber driver before. I'm like, really? Like I just assumed everybody talked, but I guess they don't.
Yeah.
So, um, yeah. So,
Yeah.
but
You were
I think,
truly at the right place at the right time for the right people. I love it.
yeah, it is. And my beloved says you need to write a book, and I said, yeah, I mean you're right. I've heard some,
Stories from the Uber.
yeah, from the front seat to the back seat.
Yeah. Yeah, for
It's
sure.
yeah. Well, actually, so there's two books from the sanctuary days. One, I need to finish it. I love it, and I give credit to the universe. That's because I'm like, oh my god, what a great name! So that is called "They Pooped, We Scooped: Unexpected Wisdom Picked Up at an Animal Sanctuary."
Love it.
And then, because all my stories in the talks that I give, or the majority of them, are all animal stories. So, and then I wrote a book, a children's book called The Blue Elephant, which is basically my story. And the it's just the ending part is so great. It just, like, oh my gosh, so great. And it talks about trauma and depression and
Mhm.
suicide, but as an elephant, and Chance, who's the baby elephant, and is going to step off a big cliff, and Barbara, who was the name of my first counselor, sees him and says, "Are you blue?" He's like, he has covered himself in smelly dirt, and so he's thinking, "How can anybody see that I was blue?" And
Mhm.
pulls him back, and then over the course of the next year, teaches him and everything else. And then at the end of the book, the two are at a river, and it's the end of the day, and the sun is shining, and Chance picks up his head and just happens to look over at Barbara, and the way the sun is hitting lights up a spot of blue on her front leg.
Mhm.
And he can't believe it. He's like, and he says, "Barbara, are you blue too?"
Mhm.
And she said, "Yes. That's how I could see you."
That's amazing. I
And it's
love
fun.
that.
That's a fun story. So I got to get it. I need to finish it. I got to get an
Yes.
illustrator and stuff. But I think I love that. And again, it's all credit to the universe, however we define it, because it just,
Mhm.
the ideas are so great. I just think, a child in third, fourth grade could look at that and think, oh, wow, that's
Yeah.
kind of cool.
Yeah. I love that. Okay, keep me updated when that comes
I,
out. We need that.
I will.
Okay,
Absolutely.
so tell me, what do you want people who are struggling to know?
One, I'm sorry that you're struggling. And what I can say is it is possible to get to a place in which you don't want to die.
Mm.
And I didn't think I'd ever get in that place. So And I'm not saying it's going to be easy.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just saying it is possible.
Yeah, I love that.
Mm.
I agree. I wouldn't do this job if I didn't think that it was possible for us to get to a place where we felt what we're looking for, whatever
Yeah.
that is. For every person, it's kind of different, but I like this idea of working towards hope.
And I think the other for the, because this is what the second question that the officer asked me on the bridge.
Mm-hmm.
The first question was, David, would you please share with me how you are feeling right now? Which was astonishing as a question.
Mm-hmm.
But the second question I share with other people who say, I don't know what to do to support somebody who is struggling. I say, do this. And Bryce, he asked me, he says, David, what can I do to help you feel supported right now?
Mm-hmm.
So when you have somebody in your life who is struggling, ask that question. You will be amazed at the simplicity of what they need.
Mm-hmm.
You will like, is that it? Yeah, just do that. But ask, what can I do to help you feel supported right now?
Mm-hmm.
It's amazing. I think it may be the greatest question of all time.
Yeah, that's fantastic. So, and we kind of got into this part, but like, what do you want people who are supporting somebody who is struggling to know?
One, thank you. And please allow yourself the grace to be angry with us and be upset with us and be frustrated with us and to question us and like wonder what in the hell causes us to be a certain way. Just please give yourself grace.
Mm-hmm.
That's okay to feel that way. And to ask us what we need. Don't assume. Ask. And it's really what can I do to help you feel supported right now? But and with all that you also please, please, please take care of yourself.
Mm-hmm.
You can't give from an empty well.
Mm-hmm.
You can't. Don't, and your job is not to change us. If we're in relationship and you want to take on a job, it is to support us in going to therapy, support us in making choices that are in our best interest, support us in considering different perspectives, but
Mm-hmm.
not your job is not to change.
Yeah.
And I think
That,
that I like to be specific about that because loving somebody with serious mental illness is incredibly freaking hard.
mm-hmm.
Talk to my beloved. I mean, both of them, my former and my current. It's hard. It's not
Mm-hmm.
easy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, and I think that that gives some space for people who are loving somebody who is struggling with their mental health, the ability to take care of themselves and know that this is not all resting on their shoulders. Ultimately, the person who is struggling also has to make decisions, has to
Yes.
take the initiative, has to make choices, and we can't do that for them.
No, exactly. And that's why I know I'm being redundant, but I keep going back to the brilliance of the question
Mm-hmm.
is it will give you the clarity. And I'll tell you a super quick story. So I have a dear friend of mine who has a son. She said, would you please talk to Levi? I said, absolutely. I'm like, what's going on? He said, well, he's really depressed. I'm like, what? Oh my gosh, I had no idea. And so we talked and hey, what can I do to help you feel supported right now? And he said, just stay in touch. And I'm like, okay, there's an age difference. I'm like, what does that look like? He said, just text me every day. I'm like, okay, well, I know what that's like to get a text every day.
Mm-hmm.
So Bryce, just text, you know? And he said, and he wanted it to be spiritual. It's like, okay, well, I can do scripture and, this and that. And it was always, I love you. And so 2 weeks ago, here's a text I get back. He said, hey, wanted to let you know, I think I've turned a corner. thanks for reminding me who I am.
Hmm.
That's all. Bryce, all I did was just send a text.
Mm-hmm.
That's thanks for reminding me who I am. Like, oh my God. So that's why that question, and these small things that we can do. And I think consistency is the other thing that is just so, like, if we're consistent, I've learned it from the greatest of all time, from my big bro, God love him, just had he tore his tricep off his elbow, had to have his left hand in a straight cast, didn't miss a day of texting.
Wow.
Didn't miss a day. Nope. Every day.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I'm just trying to, like, replicate. And my other two brothers are just as great.
Mm-hmm.
Incredible souls. So I think, but for those who take care of us, it's just, please allow yourself to be angry with us. Please allow yourself to be frustrated with us. Don't, because I think sometimes people are like, oh no, I know they're suffering. I feel bad if I'm upset with them. No, we're a pain in the ass. Good gracious, we do some stupid things. But it's a belief set created by things that, So, but just, again, it goes when we talked about this, to allow people the space to honor how they feel.
Mm-hmm.
Like, okay, and ask, okay, what can I do to help you? Just remember the word. What can I do to help you feel? What can I do to help you feel supported right now? And the brilliance in the question from the officer was, because that in and of itself means it's like a team coming together.
Mm-hmm.
Because to feel supported, I use it with my beloved all the time. I say, what can I do to help you feel supported? On the best day, she said, you're already doing it. I'm like, oh, sweet. Love that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I think that's why I think it made, in my little world, I think it's the greatest question that there will ever be. It's
Yeah.
just
I love that.
so brilliant. And I think that, and the name that we've talked about, leveraging questions, get rid of why, change it to what, let people
Mm-hmm.
know how you feel. My eldest, my dad is the master of the handwritten note, and has written hundreds upon hundreds upon hundreds. And, when you get a handwritten note from a 2-star general, and Bryce would send it to their house.
Mm-hmm.
And it was always timely, specific, and authentic. It would just change people's lives. Be like,
Yeah.
and so I have one here. I've gotten many. So end of last year, when I'd fallen into that depression, it says, David, you can beat this. My guy, my dude, he's incredible.
Yeah. Okay, so what's your advice for raising people, but especially males, and being able to share their feelings? Because we talked about this feelings dynamic, and this can be a hard one.
Yes, and I think that if for the dads out there, or the bonus dads, or the uncles, or the cousins, or whomever it is, man, please, brothers, you've got to create the safe place and initiate a conversation by sharing how you feel first.
Mm-hmm.
Don't expect whatever the age of this other person is. I'm not saying it may not be a child. You
Mm-hmm.
start the way, and it's not. Don't expect it to be comfortable. It's going to be uncomfortable,
Mm-hmm.
and that's okay. I'm not saying that that's easy. I'm just saying that's okay. Don't. And I think part of it is in what I was trained is, and let's say I'm having for the first time, I'm having a conversation with you about feelings,
Mm-hmm.
and what and and how I was taught, which I think is such a brilliant way to do it, is to kind of setting the atmosphere. Just say, hey, I want to share something with you that's really important for me, and go ahead and do it, and just boom. I feel, my mother Suzanne was always about I statements. It's all I statements. Everything's an I statement. Like just take responsibility for what you're saying. It's an I statement. And so I think it's the same thing here. Just say, hey, I want to share something with you that's really important to me. And if you say that, what you've done is if in 99.999% of the situations, you have established this amazing environment for whatever you're going to say next. It's going to be so beautifully received. So I think, hey, I'm really emphatic about using the word share. Not, hey, I want to share something with you that's really important to me. Are you okay with that? Yeah, bro. Yeah, let her rip. And that's the other thing, is you be surprised at how receptive the other person is. And then you say whatever the feeling is, and there you go. So I think to do that, and you may need to do it 1 or 2 or 3 or 10 times to establish this, I love this word, the sacredness of the space between you and this person that you are mentoring, guiding, helping in whatever way, shape, or form. After you have shared whatever number of times, and this person maybe has not shared anything up to this point, then it would be, the space would be, hey, is there something that is important to you that you would like to share with me? But I think we need to lead the way. And I think that's it, Bryce, for me, I think that's where people, they might get frustrated because they may say, well, hey, tell me how you're feeling. And you ask that person to tell you how they're feeling, and you had no experience in the relationship. Oh, I'm good. But if you, over the course of, 1, 2, 3, it won't take that many times. You'd be surprised. Or you just say, hey, I want to share something that's really important to me with you. Are you okay with that? Yeah, of course I am. And then you share, and you're like, boom, and that could be it. Then after, if they haven't said anything, it's, hey, one, thank you so much for the gift of listening as I've shared these things with you. And is there anything that is important to you that you would like to share with me? And it would be close to impossible for me to imagine that person would not say, actually, you know what, there actually is something. But again, you got to lead the way. You got to set it up and take it from there. And I think, man, do that. And it's just like the conversations my son and I have now, because his dad is not in the picture. And so I have this incredible opportunity to establish this relationship with this. And he wrote me a letter. Woo, woo. I talk about crying. Yeah. So we men, brothers out there, we have to lead by example, to share how we feel, then invite those people, those men that we are in connection, that we are in relationship with, to share in return.
Yeah, it's great advice.
And
so profound.
When the value of listening, Rachel Naomi Remen is an incredible doctor, and she has this quote: listening creates a sanctuary for the homeless parts in another person. That's not like Dr. Remen. Hey, could you be more brilliant? My God. Yeah, it's, it's just it can be, yeah. It's we can do this. We can. It's suicide's had its reign for too long. It's we gotta come at it. I think we move from preventing something to preserving something.
Yes.
I think that can be a shift that takes all this great work and these amazing people that are just doing such incredible things. Just maybe, because what was it? It was some famous invention in which ultimately they only needed, the individual only needed to adjust something, a slight little quarter turn, and it made all the difference in the world. And I don't know if it was like radio, whatever it was, but it was just a small, slight little adjustment. And I think that's going to be the same thing with this. I think because the work that's being done now is so great, I think we're focusing on the wrong thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, when I tell people that we don't call it an anti-drowning jacket, people are like, oh. And there's where, for me, Bryce, that's a God thing, because it probably happened to me when I was walking down the street, and I'm like, oh my God, that's an amazing analogy. I don't take any credit for that.
Yeah,
But
that's amazing. Yeah.
Actually went out and bought a life jacket, and at the lecture that I did to med students for a dear friend of mine, I at the midpoint of the talk, after I've talked about the tough stuff, I said, what's this life jacket have to do with suicide? Everything. Everything.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll do it. Yeah. It will.
Yeah. I love that you're impacting future generations of physicians, because they're on the front lines too.
Oh yeah. No. And my friend is such a great man. He's a psychiatrist, and we've known each other for a number of years. And he always has me. He and another dear friend of ours, who's another doctor, another psychiatrist, we lecture together. Dr. Bravo and I lecture together every year in December, which is way cool. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm always amazed.
That's amazing.
It's like I'm going to a med school. Like, are you kidding me?
Yeah.
That's
You're doing
fun.
amazing things. Thank you so much. I'm so thankful that you're here and you're doing all this amazing work, and you didn't take this opportunity that you have to do something great with your life and let it go. You held on.
And my grandmother Jane would say to you, Bryce, right back at you. So thank you. And thank your beloved, because I know that he must support you in what you do, and your beautiful children, because with your busy life, that they do things to support you. So thank them all, and your puppy.
Yes. Yes, we got a whole crew.
And if anybody wants to talk to me, please don't hesitate. If somebody maybe is thinking about ECT, or please feel free to share my phone number, my email address, anything at all. Seriously, please don't hesitate. You don't need to call and ask if it's okay. I'm here to serve.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you, David.
You're the best, Bryce. Thank you so much.
Thanks again, David. I am leaving that interview just like thinking about authenticity, genuineness, growth. I am empowered, and his words and his story and where he's come from. It's not often that people are willing to share their struggle with others to help others grow. David Woods Bartley is an amazing human, and I hope you enjoyed him as much as I have today. And I would say, if you or your company are looking for somebody as a motivational speaker to especially talk about growth and this journey from suicide to success, David is your person. So check our show notes for that. I'll also say thank you so much for your time today. Please like and subscribe to our show. Follow us on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and TikTok. And also keep the emails coming. We are loving the emails, guys. Keep them up. Giving us suggestions for future show topics to cover to accidentalexperts@gmail.com. Have a fantastic day. Some words from our legal team.
The information presented in this podcast is not intended or implied to be a substitute for appropriate professional advice, diagnosis, or treatment. All content, including text, graphics, images, and information contained on or available through this podcast, is for general information purposes only This podcast makes no representations and assumes no responsibility for the accuracy or information on or available through this podcast, and such information is subject to change without notice. You are encouraged to confirm any information obtained through this program with other sources and review all information regarding any condition or treatment with the appropriate professionals.
What we're saying is, yes, I am a real therapist, but I'm not your therapist.